Hey, this is Dr. Barry. Let's chat for a few minutes about osteoporosis and osteopenia. Now, this is a very important health issue that millions of people suffer from. For many people, osteoporosis can be a very silent thing that they don't know they have until it's too late. And so you can help me to reach these people by sharing this video. You can share it on your Facebook page, on your Twitter, on your Instagram. You can even send a private message with a link to help people who might be at risk for osteoporosis to reverse it before it gets out of hand and ends their life. So let's get into this. I'm going to try to dive a little bit deeper into osteoporosis and explain what it is a little bit to you, and then also what you can do to prevent it from ever occurring, or if you already have it, you can slow down the progression or even reverse it. Okay, it's very important. Makes perfect sense, common sense, and research wise. And so let's get into this. So, first of all, let's talk about bones. A lot of us think about bones like a rock. They're just really hard and they're just there, right? And if you look at a bone, it doesn't look like it's actively changing and remodeling, but at a microscopic level, it actually is. Bones are not just brittle and strong, they're also very flexible. And that's part of their strength is their flexibility. Often when you fall, a bone will bend and not break. That happens much more frequently when you're younger, but it happens much less frequently as you get older. But if you follow these steps that I'm going to give you, you can actually keep your bones not only strong, but also flexible. And that's what I call meaningful bone density. And we'll get into that more in a little bit. So, your bones are not like stones, and they're not even like trees. Bones are constantly being remodeled. Up to 10% of your bone at any given moment is actively being broken down and rebuilt all the time. Every bone in your body, especially the weight-bearing bones. And that's the whole important concept to get with bones. Once you get that, then everything else I'm about to say makes sense. Your bones are not a solid, static thing. They are a living tissue that is constantly being remodeled, broken down, rebuilt constantly. Okay. As you get older, or if you're not eating or drinking the right things, or if you're eating, drinking, or smoking the wrong things, that remodeling slows down and you can wind up with brittle bones. Osteoporosis is the condition of having brittle bones. Osteopenia means you're moving that direction towards osteoporosis, and you absolutely want to stop that before it reaches that point. So let's talk about this remodeling. It's a very delicate dance that's taking place in all of your weight-bearing bones all the time. And there's two cells involved. One is called osteoclasts, and the other is called osteoblasts. So the osteoclasts are constantly breaking down or chewing up bone, and the osteoblasts are constantly building or laying down new bone matrix. Okay, now osteoclasts and osteoblasts, like every other cell in your body, like I'm saying all the time, they're very wise and they're very intelligent. The osteoclasts aren't just randomly chewing up any old bone. They're chewing up, getting rid of bone that's too old, that's been damaged, that's suboptimal. Osteoclasts don't just dig in and remodel perfectly good bone. They pick and choose. They tear up and digest the bone that needs to be torn away. Make sense? Osteoblasts, on the other hand, are the bone builders. And so after the osteoclasts come in and remove all the defective bone cells, their bone matrix, then the osteoblasts come in and lay down good, new, healthy bone. Now, the osteoblasts are also very wise and very intelligent. They don't just lay down bone willy-nilly. They put it where it needs to be. They put it along stress lines. They put it on bones that are being used more and stressed more. And they also put it in the right place. They don't just put it randomly somewhere. They put it right where it needs to be. And so when this delicate dance of osteoclasts and osteoblasts is performing properly, you wind up with a bone that is very strong and also flexible. So when you fall, you bend and don't break. And that's meaningful bone density. And that's what you're actually after with all these steps I'm going to tell you and all these things to do and not to do. You're trying to increase your meaningful bone density. Okay. So we talked about the class and the blast. Now let's talk about risk factors. What are the risk factors for getting osteopenia or ultimately osteoporosis? Well, if you're older, you're at increased risk. If you're a woman, you're at increased risk. If you're of Caucasian or Asian descent, you're more at risk. If you have a family history, if mom, dad, brothers or sisters or grandparents have osteoporosis, then you're a little more likely to have it. Or if you're a very petite or small build or frame, you're at increased risk of osteoporosis as well. Now, if you have, these are called the unalterable or unchangeable risk factors. You can't do anything about these risk factors. If you have one or more of these risk factors, that doesn't mean you should just give up and say, oh, well, I'm going to have osteoporosis. Nothing I can do about it. That means you need to pay careful attention and take notes and rewatch this video again so you can get every one of these steps I'm going to tell you that can help to slow down bone loss and increase rebuilding of good, healthy, strong, meaningful bone. Okay, so that's the non-modifiable risk factor. Now, what are the risk factors that you actually have control of that you can actually change? Well, one is alcohol. If you drink more than 2 drinks a day, you are increasing your risk of osteoporosis. If you smoke, you're absolutely increasing your risk of osteoporosis. Another one of the many reasons that it's dumb to smoke. If you smoke, you got to watch my video about vaping. You got to get off the cigarettes, okay? They are destroying your body in thousands of ways. Decreasing your meaningful bone density is one of them. If you're deficient in vitamin D, that's going to make you more susceptible to osteoporosis. If you're susceptible to, or if you're deficient in vitamin K2, that's going to increase your chances of having osteoporosis. If you have a poor diet, if you eat lots of grains and lots of sugars and lots of highly processed food, you're not going to be building good, meaningful bone, okay? If you are very inactive, then you are going to remember the dance, right? And so if you're stressing your bones, then you're going to be remodeling those bones and making them stronger. But if you're lying on the couch all day, you're not going to, your body's like, well, we don't really need bones that are this strong because we don't ever do anything. So the osteoclasts kind of win that dance and they chew up more bone than the osteoblasts lay down. And you wind up with less bone density by being inactive. If you drink soft drinks, that's a huge risk factor because of the phosphoric acid. That will decrease your bone density. There's a lot of medications that you take. If you take them chronically, you can decrease your bone density. And the most important classes of medications are ones that I've actually talked about, and I have other videos on this channel about this, is the proton pump inhibitors and the H2 blockers. Those are medications that block the acid in your stomach. The acid in your stomach is supposed to be there. It has to be there. It's good for it to be there. You want your stomach to be very, very acidic. When you take something like Nexium or Protonix, omeprazole, Axid, Pepsid, ranitidine, any of those things, if you take those chronically, then you're not absorbing the minerals that you need to rebuild your bone. Because you see, bones are really, we all think calcium when we think, minerals, but actually your bones are about 50% collagen matrix. It's a collagen protein matrix. And that's what gives it the flexibility. And then your body comes in and very wisely fills in the gaps and the spaces with minerals like calcium, phosphorus, boron, and others. And so that's what gives the bone strength. So you have a flexible bone due to the collagen and then a strong bone due to the minerals. And so any of those medications, if you're blocking your acid every day, you're bound to have osteoporosis later in life. If you have low hormones, right? And so if you're not optimizing your hormones, that can give you an increased risk of osteoporosis. If you take the diabetic medications called Actos or Avandia, or their generics, they have been shown in studies to decrease your bone density. Not a good idea. You need to get on something else or just control your type 2 diabetes with the ketogenic diet. If you take chronically steroids at high doses, they will decrease your bone density. If you take lithium on a daily basis, it will decrease your bone density. Now, I'm not saying that you don't ever need any of these. You may medically need one or more of these, but if there's any way you can switch to a different medication or find a different strategy to manage the symptom or the condition that you're managing with these medications, then I highly advise you try to get off those particular medications, okay? Now, how do you measure your bone density? Now, a good doctor can see osteoporosis on an x-ray. of your hip, of your hand, of your chest even, we can see the bones are starting to look brittle. We never diagnose osteoporosis or osteopenia from an x-ray, but we can see the signs that it's there. The way you diagnose it is with a DEXA scan or a dual energy x-ray. Okay. And these used to be very expensive and used to insurance wouldn't cover them. Now almost always insurance will cover them. But even if your insurance doesn't cover a DEXA scan, or if you don't have insurance, they're usually around $100 or a little less. And it's very good information to have is to get your DEXA scan checked starting about 35 or 40. And so that way the osteoporosis or osteopenia don't sneak up on you. So the definition of osteopenia is if you have a T-score, and that's a score that's calculated by the DEXA scan. If you have a T-score of less than -1, you have osteopenia. If you have a DEXA scan of less than -2.5, you have osteoporosis. And the 1 and the 2.5 are standard deviations from the mean bone density of, if you averaged up everyone and found the mean, that's what it goes from based on your age and gender. Okay. Now, how are we going to prevent or even reverse osteopenia and osteoporosis? That's the question. Now let's get into it. I'm about to tell you the tips, so get ready to write this down. And if you don't want to write them down, you can just watch this again later when you've got a pen and paper handy. Okay, number one is your diet. If you're eating a lot of highly processed carbohydrates, if you're eating a lot of grains, if you're eating a lot of sugar, if you're eating a lot of empty carbohydrates, there's nothing in that that's going to build bone density. Okay, you have to eat what your bones are made of. Remember what I told you they're made of earlier? Collagen, a collagen protein matrix filled in with minerals. And so that's what you need to be eating to build your bones. You've got to have the building blocks or your body can't build bones, right? That makes sense. So number one is your diet. You've got to eat more fatty meat. And when you're eating fatty meat, you need to eat the skin because it contains collagen. You need to eat the gristle in your steak, even if you have to cut it up in little tiny pieces. I have one patient who cuts it up and dries it and puts it in capsules and takes it that way because she just can't stand the taste. So either learn to like the gristle or figure out a strategy to get more collagen in your diet. The membrane on the back of ribs is pure collagen. The membrane on an egg a hard-boiled egg after you've peeled the shell off, that's pure collagen. All of those things. Another great strategy is to make a good homemade bone broth full of collagen, right? That's the kind of stuff you've got to be getting in your diet. You also want good sources of calcium and magnesium and phosphorus and boron and the other minerals. You might take a supplement for the minerals. Don't take a calcium supplement. That's been shown in multiple studies not to help at all. But definitely you can get this in a good ketogenic diet if you're eating lots of calcium-rich foods, which are usually the greens, right? You would think that bone broth is a great source of calcium. There is a little calcium in bone broth, but not a lot unless you just boil them until they disappear. Another good strategy is you can crack a couple of eggs and put the shells in your bone broth. You'll get a little more calcium out of that, okay? Now, the next strategy is to exercise. So remember, your bones are not static things. They're constantly being remodeled. And so in order to tell your body, hey, make stronger bones, you've got to bear weight. You've got to walk. You've got to lift weights. You've got to do strenuous activity. Now, running on the treadmill for 17 miles, that's not really going to help much. Chronic exercise has actually been shown in a couple of studies to decrease your bone density. So you don't want to be doing ultra endurance stuff for too many years of your life. That can lower your bone density. But definitely weight bearing, like running, walking, even jogging for a limited distance can make your bones stronger. Lifting weights of any kind of resistance activity tells your body build stronger bones. And so it ramps up your osteoblasts so they lay down stronger bone when they lay down the new bone matrix, right? And we have an example of this. Astronauts who stay in space for months at a time, they don't have any gravity, right? And so when they come back to Earth, their bone density has dropped dramatically because the osteoblasts know immediately, oh, there's no resistance at all here. I'm just not, it's inefficient to have these strong bones. So we're just going to let the osteoclasts win this dance. But when they get back to Earth, the osteoblasts have to take over and build the bones back strong enough to take care of the gravity of being on the Earth's surface. So weight bearing and weight lifting exercises are vital if you've been diagnosed with osteopenia, osteoporosis, or if you never want to be diagnosed with either. The next is some things that you've got to stop doing, and that's stop smoking. It's dumb. Stop that. You got to stop smoking, okay? That saps your bone density. You got to stop drinking soft drinks. Absolutely, they're not good for you. If I know you've got that Diet Coke addiction, it's got to stop, okay? Because it will lower your bone density over the years. There are the medications I talked about earlier. If you own any of those, you got to go see your doc and say, hey, doc, you got to get me off this. What else can we do? Because I don't want to have osteoporosis later in life. Also, alcohol, we talked about. If you're drinking more than 2 drinks a day, that would be 2 beers or 2 glasses of wine. And when I say beers, I mean 2 normal servings of beer, not 2 stovepipes or 2 40s. Okay. Okay. And then, or 2 1-ounce shots of liquor. If you're drinking more than that every day, you're going to lower your bone density and you want to stop that. Now, some things that you can definitely take. Most people in the United States and the world are deficient in vitamin D. And so a good quality vitamin D supplement might be necessary. If you're eating enough pastured fatty foods, then you might get enough vitamin D. If you're getting enough good, healthy sunlight, you might be making enough vitamin D. But if you're not, then take a vitamin D supplement. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And then add with your vitamin D a good vitamin K2 supplement. That's the MK7. That's the better one. MK4 is not bad. MK7 is probably better for protecting your bone density and keeping you from putting calcium in places you don't want it, like your coronary arteries, okay? And then you might want to take another mineral supplement if you feel like you're deficient in minerals, but I'd much rather you get those from locally grown pastured foods, okay? Now, we talked about that. Now, the next thing is number 5, fix your hormones. If you're over 40 years of age, you need to have a hormone panel checked. And if you're a man and your testosterone's low, you're losing bone density, okay? And you're at risk for osteoporosis. If you're a woman and your testosterone, estrogen, or progesterone are low, you're at increased risk for osteoporosis, okay? It's been shown in multiple studies that optimizing your testosterone or in a man, or testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen in a woman protects your bone density. Now, you only want to do this with bioidentical hormones. You do not want to take the synthetic hormones. They've been shown to increase your risk of cancer and heart disease and many other things. You only want to use bioidentical hormones, okay? Next is the old saw of stress and sleep. You've got to decrease your chronic bad stress. However you have to do that, you need to do it because chronically high cortisol decreases your meaningful bone density. And then you've got to protect your sleep and get good sleep as many nights as you can, as often as you can. Sleep is when you repair and rebuild, and that's when your osteoblasts are in high gear. And so you've got to get good sleep, okay? Now, the medications we already talked about that you need to avoid, but now aren't there medications to treat osteoporosis? Yes, there are, and let's talk about that for a second. The way these medications work is they basically slap your osteoclasts around and tell them they can't dance anymore. And so you stop chewing up bone. But remember, they don't just chew up random bone. They chew up bone that needs to be taken away. And so basically you're leaving that old damaged bone, and then the osteoblasts are like, I don't know what to do. So they just lay down more and more bone on top of the defective bone. And there are actually studies to show that if you take these medications more than 5 years, your risk of having a weird fracture, a break in your bone, go sky high. And so don't depend on the prescription medications for osteoporosis. You've got to do this the right way, because all they do is increase your bone density. They don't increase your meaningful bone density. That's why I've been using that term. I'll give you an analogy. If you had a house, it was a brick house, right? And you're like, my house is strong. It's built of brick, but I want it to be stronger, right? And so you paid Big Pharma to make your house stronger. What they would do is they deliver a bunch more brick, and they would just stack the brick up in your living room. And they would say, see, we checked your house with this special machine, and your house density is now much stronger. And that'd be true. Your house density is stronger. But is your house in any way meaningfully stronger? No, it's just you got brick in the living room now. That didn't help a damn thing. And that's kind of what the prescription medications do. In the long run, they're not really a common sense solution. The way you fix this is with the steps that I told you, okay? Even though SpiderWebMD says that you cannot reverse your osteoporosis, I have seen multiple patients in my clinic follow these steps. These are not my steps. These are something anybody could find out, okay? but I've seen their DEXA scan from year to year get better every year. Hello, Spiderweb MD, that's reversing their osteoporosis. Okay, so yeah, you absolutely can reverse osteopenia or osteoporosis, and you can actually prevent them from ever happening in the first place by following these steps. So your job is to change the risk factors that you can change that we talked about, and then don't worry about the ones you can't change, like your age and your gender and your ethnicity. You can't do anything about that. But the list of things that you can change, you need to get to work on today. Okay. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see videos like this in the future, please click that subscribe button and the little bell notification right beside it so that every time I get a bright idea, you'll be one of the very first to know. If my videos have helped your health in some small way, please click on the Patreon link down below. It's a quick sign up and you can throw a buck or two my way and help me to have more time to make videos just like this. And don't forget to join Nisha and I on our weekly Facebook Live. It's currently Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is Dr. Berry. I'll see you next time.